Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. Maize and Blue Review. Good afternoon, Michigan football. I'm Dennis Fithian, and I am joined by the Maize and Blue Review's Trevor McHugh, who is on the line in his video with his stream. His picture is up on the screen, and it's great to see him on this Thursday. Trevor, how are you?
Doing really well, Dennis. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, ready to talk about Michigan, the game. There's a lot of different things to talk about with it. We're going to have a lot of fun with that coming up. And in fact, we can just tell the people that are listening or watching, we're going to pick an offensive star for Saturday night's game. We'll pick a defensive star for Saturday night's game. We'll talk about our confidence level and all different things Michigan football, including the game on Saturday night at the Big House. And we will also dive into the game plan particulars when it comes down to Michigan and Michigan State in the backyard brawl. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We will do that, but we will start with some breaking news, which includes Michigan running back Donovan Edwards, who retweeted an anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish message last night. And for those of you that are listening on the podcast, I can tell you, I put the screenshot. There's a reporter that used to work for, he covered Michigan for a long time, worked for MGO Blog, Ace Anbender. He got the screenshot of a site who had the anti-Semitic message and also a video from Kanye West. And I didn't listen to the video, but I know what Kanye West over the last 2 weeks, he's been all about anti-Semitic messages, and most people know that. So that's the background in it. And Donovan Edwards retweeted that. Now, since then, Donovan Edwards put out a tweet himself where he said, quote, "The retweet was a glitch." Now, we're going to talk about that particular part, but I'll just read the rest of what Edwards had to say. He said, "I speak for myself. I know what's in my heart. I am unequivocally against racism, exploitation, and oppression in all forms, including stereotyping and trafficking in hate. I have nothing but love for others, and I never judge anyone based on race or religion." So that's what Donovan Edwards said after he was linked with that tweet and retweeted it. Meanwhile, Jordan Acker, the Michigan Regent, he put out a tweet this morning as well that said, "Donovan is a good kid who made a mistake. After this incident, I spoke to Jim Harbaugh and Mike Hart, and I'm thrilled that Donovan and the team are going to join me by visiting the Ziegelman Holocaust Center. That's on Orchard Lake Road, north of 696. I used to work right by there. It's right off the left-hand side when you get off the expressway there. They're going to visit the Holocaust Center after the season, and Acker says, and learn firsthand where hate speech leads." All right, that's a lot to get to. The question is about Donovan Edwards and a potential suspension for any length of time. And let's just start right there. Then we can say a lot of different things. Trevor, do you think that there's a possibility that Edwards could be suspended for Saturday night?
Potentially. I mean, it's something that I trust the team, whether it's players, right? Players meeting with Edwards and having conversation, or with the coaching staff, or in this case, Regent Acker, the administration level official for Michigan, being involved and handling this in the way that they feel fit. If they think a suspension is necessary, then maybe that's a path they will pursue. I don't know if that's the case, and I don't know if I personally have a strong enough opinion one way or the other. But
well, I think that if Edwards had just had his tweet out there and there was nothing else from Acker, or we didn't hear anything from Harbaugh, we might be sitting here and this thing might be twisting around a lot. It's going to be talked about for the next 48 hours, all the way up to game time, because there's one part about, it's just it's pretty interesting message here from Edwards, because everything that he says about he knows what's in his heart and he's against racism, that is all very well thought out. And, you take somebody at their word when you read that. You think, man, nice job coming back after what happened there. The part that I think is going to be a little, I don't know, tough for people to believe is about the retweet being a glitch. Now, look, accidents happen, but, people that are familiar with Twitter, when you retweet something, maybe he could have been messing around thinking about saying something and accidentally hit the retweet and then know it. But it's very hard for me to believe that. Like that doesn't, like, it could happen, but I don't know if it's a 1 in a million shot or it's a very long shot that would happen. If he said, I retweeted that and then really thought about what my actions were and then said everything that he had said, I'd say, he's coming clean. Like, this is somebody that's coming out here and saying this is exactly what happened. So, but since then, having Acker and then being willing to say, look, I'm going to go to the Holocaust Museum and my teammate's going to go in there. And I've talked with Mike Hart about this. To me, that's a very positive step. If we didn't have that and we were just dealing with this and we were deconstructing it, I could say, hey, who knows what Michigan, might do with this situation. But I think that he has taken steps in a positive direction since last night.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about this. So I'll just kind of go through the levels. What you just said is why I trust the leadership of Jordan Acker. I think he recognized that his statement needed to be made. In terms of Edwards, I don't want to put words in his mouth or whatever, but I do believe, and I have reason to believe, that when he said glitch, he was referring to more of the slang term of a mistake and error. I don't think he was implying that Twitter retweeted it on accident or that he didn't have anything to do with it. I think he meant more it was a glitch. And again, that's kind of a slang term that's used when you make a mistake or whatever. But
like he didn't mean to retweet it? Like it was a
no. Like, yeah. So, and again, I don't want to put words into his mouth, and it doesn't matter, honestly, whether he didn't fully understand what he was retweeting or didn't mean to retweet it. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because we're living in difficult times right now, and hate speech is being amplified. And I think it's very important for people to understand, whether it's from talking to other people or what Jordan Acker has suggested, which is going to a place like the Zekuman Holocaust Center in Farmington Hills to learn about our history and what happens when hate speech is amplified, unintentional or not. It's a learning opportunity. They're going to turn it into that. At the end of the day, he's a 19-year-old kid that appears to have made a mistake, whatever level of mistake or intent that was. He's made a mistake. And again, I do believe Edwards, because anybody who knows him or follows his social media understands how passionate he is about civil rights issues, and the character that he has. And again, I don't know what the mistake was or what level. It just doesn't matter to me. I appreciate Michigan's leadership. And again, I think it's really good in these moments to take an opportunity to learn, the seriousness and the volume of what, we have retweets now where you can hit a button and amplify something like that. And a football player can make a mistake that is seen quickly and screenshot and all of that. So that's just part of the world that we're in now. So yeah, it's just a learning opportunity. And then I'm excited to see this pursued as a learning opportunity. And I really appreciated Acker's comments after the fact. And yeah, I mean, I could nitpick glitch in those parts of the words, but Jordan's, Edwards is in a tough spot too, right? This is going to be a difficult situation for him. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think the part about it being a learning experience, we'll see where it goes from here. From Michigan's standpoint, there's a part about this where, it's lucky and unlucky that he's part of a team. It's lucky that, he'll have people surrounding him that can help him. You can even say damage control and everything that works on here. That's the unlucky part is that this is not this anti-Semitism isn't coming out of left field just right now. It is from Donovan Edwards. But with Kanye West, I mean, if people are following, this has been the very top of the news. And in my particular social media thread, I've got Jewish friends. I mean, that's for the last week or two. They've been calling for, boycotts of Kanye West, and it actually worked. I mean, Adidas showed him the door and has worked its way into football. Aaron Donald, who was represented by Kanye West, said, we're cutting ties. So, I mean, these things. And, I don't know how much Donovan Edwards is watching that situation, how much he knows what's going on with Aaron Donald and that he severed ties with Kanye West or, what he thinks of Kanye West as a musician or as somebody who's talking about the, Jewish community. I mean, all of these different things. I don't know any of that. So moving forward, him being as transparent as he can and then telling everybody what he has learned, I think is going to be the important part. Now, Michigan, the other side is they've got a game to play on Saturday, and you will have a lot of people that don't really care about Jewish people or the message or Kanye and everything else. They care about the game on Saturday, and they might be like, suspend this guy right away. And so that's going to be part of this over the next 48 hours as well. And then you'll have Michigan people on one side. And what are Michigan people going to do? Well, they're going to give him a break. Let's give the kid a break. Let's, have, and so you have to weigh a lot of different things when it comes down to this. But I think the part where I'm with you is that this is, let's see where it goes from here. And this being a learning experience, and that we have already had Edwards say something and take steps along with Michigan in the correct direction, or looks like a correct direction. Where if there wasn't that, I think this could be where you'd say, hey, Jim Harbaugh might be getting a lot of pressure from a lot of people to say, hey, you better sit this guy out. I think Harbaugh in this situation could say, look, the kid is. He didn't say necessarily sorry. We read what he had to say there, but he's taking steps and action towards learning about, like you said, how what speech and how what hate speech can actually do, and we're going to use this as a learning experience, and we're going to surround him and keep him on the team, and we're all going to learn from this. I think you can take that direction without being a homer or without being against Michigan. I think you could just take a look at this, whatever team it was going to be, and say the exact same thing.
No, I agree completely. Again, I'm not looking to peg Edwards as anything or label him as anything or think that he needs a level of discipline to correct for the action. That's not what it is. It is a learning opportunity. And I would just ask that for anyone who doesn't think it's a learning opportunity or doesn't understand not necessarily what Edwards did, but the danger of some of that hate speech being echoed and why it's dangerous. Again, same thing Edwards is doing. Look at the Zeckelman Holocaust Center in Farmington Hills or visit their website, holocaustcenter.org.
Good job, Trevor. And the thing, there's a lot of people that are asking, can you accidentally retweet something? You can. I mean, it takes two moves. Like liking something is a lot easier to accidentally do. Like I've gone through before and I'm like, I didn't know I have. Like if somebody said, whoa, you like that? I'm like, ooh, I really didn't know that I like. So, that does happen. Retweet takes two moves though. Like you retweet and then it asks you if you want to retweet or quote tweet. So there's like two moves, which I suppose you could get into and, think about whether you were going to quote tweet something and then say something, but you actually retweet and you didn't even know. And then you're off to doing something else. If you're messing around with a fiery anti-Semitic message, boy, that would be the part where you might want to be not just casually flipping through and stuff like that. But yeah, it could happen. So, there is that part. How much you want to believe that part? If somebody said, what do you think, we're born yesterday or something? I said, I get that. I don't know. I don't know if it was an accident or not. I really don't. I tend to think it wasn't. But, if that's where I'm at. If you had anything else to say, I don't want to keep going back and like one-upping every time you say something. But if you have anything else to say, you can.
No, I just, on that last point, just kind of echo, it doesn't matter to me what the degree of the mistake was. He has a platform. This was placed on his platform, and he deleted it immediately. And now, with his teammates, his coach, and again, Regent Hacker, he's looking to address and learn from the mistake. And that's whatever degree of mistake it was a mistake. So he's ready to move on, and I guess we all can too.
Yes, we will be. And it is going to be talked about. That would be interesting to see if during the game it's even something that they address on the broadcast. It's possible. So there it is. As far as what we're talking about, we start out with the game plan, and there are a lot of different ways. Like you say, game plan is like, is Michigan going to come out and run? Are they going to come out and throw? Are they going to come out and blitz? Are they going to bracket the two wide receivers that seem to be the most dangerous Spartans? As you have thought about how Michigan will game plan against Michigan State on Saturday, what are some of the things that you keep thinking about that Michigan will do.
Yeah. Thankfully, we've had a bye week, so I've got 1.5 weeks worth of stuff floating around in my head, right? Yeah. I continue to think that running the ball is going to be very, very, very important, right? Michigan lost to Michigan State last year for the same reason they beat Ohio State, which was Michigan State stopped Michigan's run. They didn't have the ability to run the ball late, forced them into passing situations. They didn't capitalize on mistakes, kicked too many field goals early on in the game, right? Where against Ohio State, they were able to control the ball with the run and keep the lead. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing with it being in Ann Arbor this year too. Obviously, that's a little bit of an advantage, but I think they're going to run the ball. I do think JJ is going to have a bigger game just because of the secondary. I do think they're going to test some of those corners with some of their big play receivers. I do think this is going to be a big game for one receiver. And then on defense, nice.
I like it. No. That's
yeah. On defense, I do think it's going to be the exact same thing. Stuffing the run, getting Michigan State to give up on it, and then forcing Thorne to throw the ball, which we've seen under pressure. I've looked at some numbers, and he struggles under pressure. He's able to, more likely to throw interceptions. And then I think Michigan's going to play a lot of man defense in this game. I think Jadyn Reed is really, really, really good at picking on zone and winning in man matchups against weaker corners. I think Michigan's got the secondary this year and the committee approach with the pass rush to be able to leave their guys on an island a little bit this year.
Yeah, not that I'm want to get into an argument about last year's game, but I thought that if there was the biggest thing, if you said quickly, what happened last year? Kenneth Walker III happened last year, and Michigan not being able to tackle him, not being able to contain him, and not being able to get their personnel out of the field. Those were the biggest things to me. And but those things that you talk about, State stopping Michigan's run, Michigan not being able to run, and then late having to pass. I mean, I'm with you on that. It's not like I disagree with it, but it was so much canine with the 5 touchdowns that I just can't get away from that. That was the big thing, and that's where my game plan goes to. As much as I think that Michigan could come out and say, we're going to come out because they know we're going to run the ball and they're going to be putting together an overpopulated box, and they're all going to be up at the line of scrimmage, so we're just going to throw on them. I think that's possible. But the thing, when you look at Michigan State, if you watch Michigan State or you look at any of the Michigan State numbers, you can both run and throw on them. You can do whatever you want. So I don't think Michigan's just sitting back and say, hey, let's go ahead and just spin let's just go ahead and pick a play out of the bucket. Anything's going to work against Michigan State, but they have to feel really good. If they want to come out, somebody says, let's throw on them. All right, let's do it. And so I think the defense, when McCarthy walks up to the line, I think he'll have the answers. It's like if they're sitting there and they're going to say, we're going to play him straight up, it's like, let's get it to Donovan Edwards. Let's give it to Blake Corum. We can push these guys back and run on them all day, and that'll just loosen things up. I don't know if they're just sitting there licking their chops at it, but they have to feel good about whatever kind of game plan they're putting in.
Yeah, and it will be deliberate. Whatever it is, it will be deliberate. There's an interesting element to this game from a Michigan State defensive standpoint, which is for the first part of this season, Jacoby Windman has been playing more of a edge type role for Michigan State, and they've run a 4-2-5 style defense. Last week against Wisconsin, they switched to a base 4-3, returned Windman to the linebacker spot where he's comfortable, and he was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week. Obviously, I have more faith in Michigan's offense than Wisconsin's, but it's going to be interesting to see if this is a permanent scheme change for Michigan State. Was it Wisconsin dependent? What are they going to bring out for this Michigan game? And that it's going to be something interesting Michigan will have to plan for. But I'm with you. Something that we saw against Penn State and started to see in the second half against Indiana is Michigan's plays always have like 3 or 4 different ways they can be run, and they create tendencies early on in the season, and then they start to break some of those tendencies and catch defenses off, looking when they don't expect. They think this is going to happen, and then the opposite happens. So coming into this game, like you said, JJ is going to be able to make the read and know whether it's a true run pass option or just a direct run or whatever. He's going to have some flexibility to be able to mess with the Michigan State defense.
Yeah, and as far as Michigan on defense, I have seen, not to bring up, there was K9 last year, but we already did bring him up. And, I go back, I can remember, Plaxico Burress dominating this game with like 300 some crazy odd yards. Everybody was trying to guard him. Michigan even put a wide receiver and David Terrell over, see if he could do anything, and nothing worked. So the point was, I've seen single players go off for Michigan State in this particular rivalry. And Jayden Reed and Keon Coleman, number 1 and number 0. Those are the two. Those are the two guys. If Michigan can control those guys defensively, the Wolverines, we know what they can do on offense, but defensively, man, they can just contain those guys. They're going to have a great chance to win this game.
That's such a good point. This really is like an X factor rivalry, like a game that's been dominated by big games by individual players, right? We talked about K9 last year and his 3 second half touchdowns, right? And I can close my eyes and picture the Braylon Edwards catch, the Charles Woodson interception on the sideline. I can tell you Chris Perry had 53 carries against Michigan State, right? We remember these individual moments. And in that aspect, Michigan has a big advantage. Like MSU just doesn't have, aside from Reed, I'm with you, and arguably Coleman, and then they've got a couple tight ends that are unique talents as well. But they don't have that Kenneth Walker level X factor this year. And Michigan does have that with Blake Corum and arguably Donovan Edwards and Ronnie Bell and Roman Wilson. And on the defensive side of the ball with Sainristil and Morris and Oki. And you know what I mean? So you just start to add this up. And then just statistically, again, I know everybody says throw out the numbers, it's a rival game, right? So there's some element of that. But we're talking about a Michigan offense that's top 5 in the country, right? Points per play, I think they're 4th. Their defense is now number 1 in the country in terms of stop rate and the points they give up, where Michigan State's like 74th or something like that. So you're just talking about a Michigan offense that is scoring consistently when they have a ball, and a defense that is stopping the other team from scoring. And they're going up against an opponent that can't stop the other offense and is struggling to score on offense at levels they used to last year because they don't have Kenneth Walker. So I know it's a rivalry. I think the first quarter or second quarter will probably, that first half in general will be probably closer than we expect. I wouldn't be shocked if MSU gets a couple plays to Reed or Coleman or Thornton gets away in a scramble, whatever. But I do feel pretty confident Michigan's going to run away with it in the second half, and we'll have a version much closer to 2019 than to 2016.
Yeah, you talk about those different years and however you want to look at it, and last year, the last 2 years, just while Tucker's been there, while Harbaugh's been around. The one thing, just since Harbaugh's been there, Michigan has had the better team and lost almost every time. Last year, I think Michigan had the better team than Michigan State. They went on to win the Big Ten. I think you can agree. They won. Or they were the better team, and they lost that game. The pandemic year, they throw out the pandemic. Michigan was a better team. Even though they weren't that good of a team, they actually were better than Michigan State, and they lost to them. When it rained at Michigan Stadium the last night game, and Lewerke running around and making plays in the water and everything else, Michigan was a better team than Michigan State. And so what do we? And Scott is talking about the snap game.
Double with the snap, 2015. Yep.
I don't know. Was Michigan the better team? Is that the year that State went to the playoffs? Well, State was the better team that year. So the one year that Michigan wasn't the better team was the one that they led for the entire game, except that last second, when they went in. So that's so that's a part where you bring the rivalry in. If you're a State fan, you're saying, wait a second, let's check the weather report. It'd be nice if it was raining. It doesn't look like it. It's going to happen. So they're going to have to depend on something else, their personnel maybe to get this job done. But that's the rivalry stuff. When you start going through it, you can talk yourself into this being a closer game.
100%. I think there's an element to that, right? Because Michigan State's D'Antonio learned it very early on. You build that program at Michigan State on beating Michigan, right? You can't throw out the 2020 year for a couple big reasons. One, that was arguably Harbaugh's worst loss. I've said that on record a few times. He made dramatic changes to his program that led to the success in 2021 because of what happened in that game. Also, whatever COVID excuse you want to make up for Michigan, MSU had it worse. Tucker was hired late in the season. Remember, he wasn't even allowed to see his team implement any game plans. Losing that game was atrocious, and it gave Tucker the fuel to every recruit that came in that offseason playing the highlights on the TV, right? Does Kenneth Walker go to Michigan State if they're 1-6 without a win against Michigan in 2020? Probably not, right? Massive loss. It matters. Just it counts. But yeah, the difference this year for me is there's enough of disparity that I think the little things that you're talking about, the lucky bounces or whatever it might be that makes the rivalry games close, I think there's enough disparity here that Michigan can overcome that if things don't go their way. I'm also really just confident in, again, we started in 2021. There was a lot of talk, right? Was Michigan to back it up? And they did. And they argued losing the Michigan State game is why they beat Penn State and Ohio State, whatever. So I believe a lot of the talk now. So when they say they're taking this Michigan State game more seriously this year, and they hate seeing the Tucker 2-0 against Harbaugh tweets, I believe them. So I think Michigan's going to play up and they're going to play smart. And then at the end of the day, as long as they don't make the big mistakes that erase the talent advantage, they should win comfortably.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Like if Michigan was sitting around and they didn't know, all of them had amnesia, didn't know anything what happened in years past, and then they just sat around listening to like Taylor Lewan and Jumbo Elliott, trash these guys like, they're little guys. You can just go ahead and we give them zero respect. And you could say, wow, Michigan might. But, these guys all remember what happened last year and what Tucker's been doing for the last 2 years. So I think Michigan – in a lot of years, I don't feel like this, that I don't think the mental part where they're at with the respect for the opponent, sometimes they think they downplay it and don't look at it. But I think they're in a good spot this year. There's a question for me on the feedback, but I'm going to put it to you. I think you are going to be better at, and it's a guess a little bit, but it's going to be an better educated guess from you. Scott asking if Jadyn Davis, the quarterback out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Providence Day, is going to commit to Michigan after the ball game. What do you think, Trevor?
I feel, I don't like commenting on this. I feel more confident in this visit compared to others that he may commit. I do think his timeline has been adjusted since before the season, that he wants to focus on high school and get through that. But I do think there's a chance, if we're up from whatever percentage to this new percentage. But Davis is handling this entire process very, deliberately, diligently. He's been to Michigan a bunch. He's repped Michigan gear. We know the whole situation. So I think Michigan's comfortable in their situation with him. I don't think if he doesn't commit, I don't think it means anything. If he does, it would be great. But again, I don't know.
I don't either, but what would be nice if he commits and means it? Like if Michigan, I've heard a lot of people like they're going to play hardball with him and start talking about they're going to look and offer some other quarterbacks. Like, all right, maybe that's the way in negotiations. Sometimes you have to do some things like that. It's just part of that. So maybe Michigan will be playing some hardball here, but there's also the part for Davis to be like, sure, I'll commit. But I want him to believe it. I want him to commit if he wants to go to Michigan and if he's 100% sure. And that's what I would say to him. If I could get him on I'd say, look, Jadyn, Michigan wants you. They totally want you. They understand. But, they also have to, if you're a little bit unsure, which you understand, they're going to have to start at least taking a look elsewhere. So you want to commit, great. Just make sure you're 100%. I don't know if they say it like that or not, but, that's what I'm saying about it.
Yeah, I'm getting into a weird gray area. I'll be careful, but here's what I'll say.
All right.
I think that's why he hasn't committed yet. And I think when he does commit, he will mean it. Like, that's how he's taking this process. And I think there is a chance Michigan could have earned a commitment from him much earlier on in this process and didn't, because he knew the process was going to continue. And I think both sides agreed that was okay. So
I know
I'm with you on that.
I'm getting off the topic, and maybe we can sit around talking about Jadyn Davis for an hour. But one other thing, there's been some name, image, and likeness. I don't know. I talked about it, hit everybody over the head, for 3 straight months of the summer. But over the last couple of days, there have been at least some different developments talking about it. And if there's a fiasco going on down at Texas A&M with a lot of their top guys, and there's smoke, there's fire out of the locker room down there. But is it good news for Michigan in terms of the name, image, and likeness, and with Jadyn Davis, where he might feel better about Michigan from that standpoint, from what you've been looking at?
Yes, in a sense. So I did speak with Regent Acker about this. I published the NLI article this morning, and I think what he echoed was any clarity. Yeah, name drop, right?
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Go ahead.
He is the most candid and approachable admin official. It's not because I happen to be at Maize and Blue Review. He's consistently on Twitter responding to folks and answering questions. So he's he's very approachable, and I appreciate that about him. But it's clarity is what he called it for Michigan, who is trying to do things the right way. I posted on our board today, if you're somebody who's waiting for Michigan to start breaking the rules, set up a chair, you're going to be waiting a long time. So I do think the NCAA has been slow in terms of, or non-existent in terms of managing what is some clear out in the open rule breaking, a Wild West scenario like we've discussed. I do think Michigan and the people involved in some of the NIL things happening would admit it hasn't moved as quickly as they would like. We have reasons and confidence and optimism and whatever to believe heading into next year, things are going to start to progress in a more positive way. And then there's things Michigan is trying to lead the way on. Harbaugh has been very public about revenue share and the fact that the Big Ten just got a annual $1.6 billion contract to broadcast its football games. And seems like some of that money could find its way to the players. It's a long way from happening, but it's something I think Michigan could be a leader in terms of a revenue share through NIL.
1.6 million can go a long way.
Billion.
Wow.
Each school gets $100 million. I mean, it's just absurd money.
I thought that's what you said. So I don't know.
Did I say million? I might have said million.
Oh, no. You said billion. I'm doing what my wife tells me not to do because, like, I think actually that my hearing isn't the best that it's been. And so, sometimes I won't hear what she says. And then other times I hear exactly what she says. And then I act like, oh, and she's like, you heard exactly. So I was doing that so I can see how it might confuse you.
One last thing on Davis, too. I know some people have kind of echoed the more Carr situation left at the altar or whatever. I think Michigan is very confident in their second option if Davis does not work out as well. And Michigan's going to be in a good spot in 2024, whether it's Davis or a different quarterback. But I do think if it was today, I think Davis ends up at Michigan. We'll see. I'm just not going to freak out if it isn't this weekend. So.
Well, it's Trevor McHugh from the Maize and Blue Review. He has posted a story on the Maize and Blue Review this morning. He's putting articles up there left and right. And what I did not know is that he was going to speak with such authority on recruiting, but I'm happy that he did. This is a little bit fun, and we can ask the folks on instant feedback to give us an offensive MVP and a defensive MVP for this game. And Trevor, you have thought about this a little bit. The game Saturday night, you can only, you go ahead. You want to try to, give it to the entire team or whatever else, however you want to do it. But, an offensive MVP, what direction are you going?
I do think it will be Corum just because he's likely to get 20, 25. You said 25 or more carries in every Big Ten game so far. So he's probably going to get enough carries to get enough yards and enough touchdowns that he's going to be a big factor in the game. But I do continue to think that Michigan is going to target a mismatch with the receiver. I have three names. I haven't chosen which one yet, but I believe Roman Wilson, Andrew Anthony, or Darius Clemens is going to have an impact game at wide receiver against Michigan State.
I want to give you Clemens because he wasn't on my radar. Those other guys, the excellent picks. Anthony, the East Lansing native, and what he did last year, he almost had 3 touchdowns, and the 2 that he had were spectacular TDs, the 93-yard bolt of lightning, and the other one that J.J. McCarthy threw him in the end zone. He looked awesome there, and the third one, man, was just off his fingertips. So I would love that, but the true freshman Clemens, the true freshman Anthony really played a little bit against Northwestern last year, but he really didn't take off and, just announces a rivalry. Until last year in East Lansing. So Clemens is a great pick. I love it. I'm gonna put you down for that. I'm going with Blake Corum. I think he's going to be the MVP. Yeah. I'm right with you. It's right there in front of us. He wants it. You listen to him talk. I mean, it is. You can go somewhere else if you want to. I'm going with Blake Corum. And I bet that if Jim Harbaugh was sitting here, he'd say, I like them all. And he'd go, but I bet he would pick Blake Corum too. Okay, before we get to the defensive MVP, let's just take a sampling of what the people are thinking about as an offensive MVP for Saturday. Scott says Blake Corum. Kenneth says JJ. Lyle with a vote for JJ. Ooh, how about that?
That'd be a nice stat line, 100 rushing, 350 passing. All right.
Anthony. Here we go. Trevor McHugh is on fire today, says the captain.
In fuego.
Give Scott the first crack at the defensive MVP because he's just written in, and he says defensive MVP Morris. So I'm going. That's Mike Morris, who leads Michigan in sacks with 2.5. Not a bad selection. Trevor McHugh is on the selection right now for the defensive MVP. He went Darius Clemens offensive MVP. Now he goes over to the defensive side.
I struggled. I think Morris is a really good pick. I think Oki, because of his speed and Thorne's escapability, could have a big game. And then Mozzie in the middle was another guy I considered that maybe not show up on the stat sheet, but he's going to have a big day creating, triple teams in the middle of that line. But, we talked about Jayden Reed and Keon Coleman earlier. And then I also said I think there's a couple tight ends that make me a little nervous. And I think those receivers are going to move around a lot. I think the defensive MVP is going to be Mikey Sainristil. I think he'll end up in coverage quite a bit on Reed, Coleman, some of these tight ends in the slot. And he's going to make plays to keep them hopefully capped right in short plays, maybe getting an interception even. And then also just his ability to come into the box and impact the pass rush. I think they'll send him on a couple blitzes after Peyton Thorne. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Sainristil have a really good day in coverage and get a sack and an interception.
Wow, I love it. So if it was on Coleman, it would be 0-on-0 a matchup, which to me sounds awesome. Well, that's great. I do want to tell everybody that all week long, I mentioned that Trevor just posted a story on the Maize and Blue Review today. You should sign up. You see the way to subscribe on the bottom of the screen. For those of you that are listening on the podcast, we like you on the podcast. We like when you subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast. But if you look on the pods all week long, you get them Monday. Trevor's a part of the Rise to the Victor. That might be the most popular show here on Maize and Blue Review. And if it's not, it is this film review with Trevor and the film guru Toski. That's very popular. The show that he's on right now, the Daily Live Talk Show, that's what we're doing Monday through Friday, as you know, at 1 o'clock. You got recruiting coverage Tuesday, Thursday. You've got the two heavyweights, the insiders with Justice and the publisher Henschke bringing that. Friday, a show that I'm involved with. And you don't want to miss is the odds and gambling. Then after the game, the Maize and Blue Review are on. Sometimes Trevor jumps on Spaces, and we can hear from him. We like it when he does. We love it, actually, when he comes on. So we do appreciate you doing that, Trevor. And then just one last thing I can tell everybody that we do have the postgame on Saturday night. We'll be on. It's going to be a late one, so 7:30 start means we might not get on until around 11:30, but we'll be talking along myself with Jim Scarcelli and any other staff that wants to call in. I got a couple quick hitters for you, Trevor, before we go. You're somebody that is not only writing and, broadcasting and going on different radio stations and everything else, but, you're checking and getting a feel for social media. And I just wanted you to tell me over the last few days what has been like with the interaction with Michigan and Michigan State fans on social media, maybe family and friends, what it's been like.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, man. I posted something last night about it because I had just been scrolling through my feed and I saw like 3 or 4 ridiculous things in a row, like Shea Patterson highlights, somebody faked a D'Antonio tweet, people tweeting out Braylon Edwards' mug shot. Like 2 weeks is just too much time. And then, oh man, we're gonna have all day Saturday too. It's a night game as well, right? So that Wisconsin win injected a little bit more toxicity in the rivalry, where the Tuck coming has been coming back out again. But it's largely been fun. But yeah, it's been it's time for the game. They're reaching for some nonsense now and getting some personal attacks in there as well.
I've got a friend who I get the rivalry stuff and, the hatred and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like that stuff more than anything. They like it more than recruiting. They like it more than the games. They just love it. I've got a Michigan friend who loves it so much. He's always sending me, Braylon Edwards said this. I'm like, Braylon always is saying, crazy stuff. And he's like, Taylor Lewan. He's always sending me like the videos of Taylor Lewan. I'm like, Taylor Lewan loves that kind of stuff too. So it doesn't surprise me that he's always sending me the Lewan and the Braylon stuff. And then I've got the State fan. I'm just lucky because I've got 4 or 5 State fans in my fantasy league. And I was almost positive that I was going to be playing one this week that had Kenneth Walker, and I looked and I'm playing another Michigan guy because my friends that are State fans, they're in on 2 things this week, in really the last month. They're adamant that Aiden Hutchinson was a terrible pick for the Lions. They hated it when they picked him, and then he had a few sacks, and they were like, then they were quiet for a little bit. But then when the Lions started losing, he wasn't doing anything. It was all like, this guy, just get him on, the HBO show, Hard Knocks. Get him off of there. And they just couldn't stop talking about how much of a bust Hutchinson was, and then how great over the last 2 weeks. I mean, you would have thought that Kenneth Walker was playing for them coming up on Saturday as much as they talk about him, just how great he is and how deserving of the Heisman Trophy and certainly a trip, to the downtown athletic club. And I was sure, and I'm like, oh, no, don't tell me I'm playing Spartan. And then I wasn't. Because if I was, it wouldn't matter. I wouldn't hear anything about the game. I would just hear everything about, Kenneth Walker running all over me, running wild in fantasy. And it isn't happening. So I'm feeling good on both parts.
I've never understood. Well, I mean, I get it because Michigan State will always feel like Michigan gets favoritism or whatever. But whether Kenneth Walker was in New York or not had nothing to do with Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson finished 2nd. Walker finished 6th. Like, why aren't you mad that Kenny Pickett was there? Right? Like, that's just that. Well,
too.
I know, but like, just the idea that like Hutch took his spot or something, and now I'm going to hate him forever, even though he's on the NFL team that I root for. I've said it a couple times. I think I said it on this show too already. Dude, if Blake Corum ends up in New York, whew, the hatred that's going to come out of East Lansing.
I mostly stay away from that kind of like one-ups, but earlier, it was just a couple weeks ago, that I did send something about, Corum better, get ready to go to New York. It was and it was in a thread with all of those, everybody in the fantasy league, but 5 of those guys are Spartans, and like nobody said it. Like these guys normally, it'll be a text thread and it'll go on. I gotta mute it because these guys are going into the night back and forth. I sent that one out, not one thing for 24 hours, and I was like, all right, that one did its job. One did its job.
That's kind of the goal, right? You have to one up till everybody shuts up, right?
Like you said, it's been 2 weeks, but too long. And that's the part. I like the night games and don't get me wrong, but Saturday people are, they're going to be so ready to go at noon, like, between noon and 7:30. I've been down to some of those tailgates. It's so out of control. It really is. So like you tell everybody, hey, be safe, like just don't, you don't want to black out before 3:30. You don't want to do all this. I remember, I had students falling in front of me in the street. My first ever experience for a night game was against Notre Dame. And for some reason, I was driving through downtown, but right over there by El Bell Field. And like these 4 girls just fall down in front of me in the road. And I'm like, this is exactly what you'd expect for a night game. You girls are crazy. Get out of the road. And it just happens. We're all hoping just for safety. And then just a nice clean game, and the best team will come out on top.
Yeah, I like the night game in terms of the advantageous environment it creates for Michigan. But, man, do I feel for community members, police officers, and the folks that are going to have to bring some calm come 11:30 after that game.
I'm with you. Well, you did your job today, Trevor. Thanks for staying on here. And I know, you'll have Michigan covered from head to toe, day and night. So we do appreciate that. We'll see you on the Den, on the Maize and Blue Review. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. See you later.
There he is, Trevor.